Hello, my name is Alexsis Duarte. I'm a 2014 Summer Institute on Medical Ignorance undergraduate intern. I will be discussing the recent internal incident of anthrax at the CDC. Anthrax is an infectious disease caused by the spore-producing bacteria known as Bacillus anthracis. This bacterium can be found in nature in soil and animals, both wild and domestic. Humans contract anthrax by having contact with any one of these sources. When the spores of Bacillus anthracis are introduced to an organism's body, they're attracted to the water, sugar, and nutrient-rich environment. They begin to act like living cells. Once activated, these spores multiply and spread throughout the body and release toxins at the same time.
On the molecular level, Bacillus anthracis secretes a 3-part protein toxin. The chief structure of this protein is composed of a cell-binding protein, known as a protective antigen, or PA. This PA attaches to an anthrax receptor on a host cellular membrane. A group of 7 protective factors obtain the other 2 parts of the protein. Lethal factors, LFs, and edema factors, EFs. When 7 protective antigens bind with the lethal factors and/or edema factors, they form one mass or complex on the receptor and enter the cell. Once inside the cell's low pH compartment, the LFs and EFs are released and the body experiences toxic effects. These toxic effects include necrosis from the LFs and edema from the EFs.
Anthrax in humans can be categorized in 3 ways: cutaneous, affecting the skin; inhalation or pulmonary, affecting the lungs; and alimentary tract, which can be divided into 2 different categories: oropharyngeal, affecting the mouth and the pharynx, and gastrointestinal, affecting the digestive tract. Cutaneous is the most common route of infection for humans. This happens when a human has an open wound and comes into contact with either an animal or another source of the bacterium. Inhalation occurs when spores are inhaled into the lungs. Alimentary tract infection occurs when the meat of an infected animal is ingested. The spores make contact with both the oropharyngeal and gastrointestinal tracts. In each form of anthrax infection, the spores vegetate and multiply. As well, the capsule of the Bacillus anthracis spore is antiphagocytic. This means that phagocytes, or macrophages, cannot implement the normal immune response in extinguishing foreign bacteria from the body. Although anthrax really made air waves in 2001 in several acts of bioterrorism, more recently there was an internal exposure incident at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta, Georgia.
CDC workers were possibly exposed to live anthrax.
You know, quite simply, Aaron, it looks like either someone or a group of people messed up here. It does not appear to be intentional. This appears to be an accident. They were supposed to inactivate the bacteria first and then wait 48 hours to make sure they, in fact, were inactivated and then move it. Neither one of those steps happened.
This could be the largest case of anthrax exposure in a U.S. lab in more than a decade.
Those scientists are now being monitored and given medication.
The CDC discovered the exposure last Friday when the anthrax bacterial plates used in the labs were being gathered for disposal and live bacteria was detected on them.
Well, my name is Bill Martone. I'm board certified in internal medicine and infectious diseases, and I am currently retired. So altogether I was at CDC for about 22 years. Yeah, well, anthrax has been around with us for millennia, and it's mainly a disease of animals, but occasionally it's transmitted to humans. Inhalational anthrax still, in spite of antibiotics, may carry a mortality of 50% or more. And it's a particularly important disease because it does have the potential of becoming weaponized. So that's why we're concerned about this particular organism. Anthrax is present in the United States, and it's a soil organism. For unknown reasons, it blooms from time to time, and then we get these epizootics. There's vaccines for the cattle as well as humans. It's a different vaccine, but when these happen in animals like this, one of the recommendations is that all the herds get immunized. Of course, the recent outbreak in 2001 of letters that were sent to various news outlets and members of Congress, there's some 22 cases in that particular episode. About half of those were cutaneous, the other half were inhalational pulmonary anthrax, and that resulted in about 5 deaths. Before that, I had the opportunity to investigate an outbreak in North Carolina in a textile mill. Now, textile mills have classically been areas where there's an occupational risk of anthrax, especially or mainly those which import animal hairs to weave into threads. And that was the case in the investigation I did. Indeed, they imported goat hair to make felt. We did sampling of the environment and found the highest concentration of spores in the areas where the raw material was carted and sorted, which creates this tremendous aerosol. When we walked into the plant, you can see a fog in the plant of dust which carried the anthrax spores. Fortunately, all the employees there were immunized for anthrax, as were we. We found that the 2 cases that had occurred were in contractors who somehow escaped the immunizations. And so our recommendation was that anybody who goes in those plants really should be immunized for anthrax. Well, I think, you know, it's an important disease for physicians to be aware of because there are sporadic cases that occur, mainly from imported animal products, like there's been outbreaks associated with drums from Haiti where the goat skins that were used to cover the drum was contaminated with anthrax. Mostly they're cutaneous cases, but physicians should be aware that this is a possibility. I think it's important for the public to know that it's very rare. It's a very rare disease. It's treatable with common antibiotics that we have. Almost all of the cutaneous cases are treated successfully. The inhalational cases remain a problem. The sooner we get to those, the better.